Hello, and welcome to the program Spiritism Inspiring Lives. Today, our reflections will be based on the theme separation of the soul from the body. Surely, these reflections start by understanding that according to Christian beliefs, body and spirit are dimensions of the same individuality. And also in reflecting about this profound, broad perspective in our existences, we do understand who we really are, immortal beings, spirits, where we came from, the spiritual world, what is the objective for us to be on earth, which is to evolve, to progress, and where we are going once the physical death approaches, returning to the spiritual world. Our reflections are based within the teachings of Spiritism. Spiritism is a science which deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits and their relationship with the corporeal world. Once we are here now reflecting briefly, and our reflections are not conclusive, merely because the subject is quite broad and our time is very short. But we are aiming to bring some questions, some reflections that we can start to think about ourselves as immortal beings, that we are not a body, that sooner or later all of us will be going through the natural phenomenon of the physical death in different ways, for sure, but we keep on alive and keep on honoring our own individuality. That is fundamental and very important for us to understand that we will not vanish, we will carry on alive. But let's understand in our reflections here, we bring the question in the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, question 154, and I quote, "Is the separation of the soul from the body a painful process?" And then we receive the information or the enlightenment from the enlightened beings who are teaching us by saying, no, the body almost always suffers more during life than at the moment of death. The soul has no part in this. The sufferings that are sometimes experienced at the moment of death are a joy for the spirit, which sees the ends of its exile approaching. So it's important that we can reflect about these teachings that bring to us, because sometimes we may fear, is it painful? The reality is, although we may not be remembering, we already went through many times of the physical death through the disincarnation. But bear in mind, as I mentioned, we are all immortal beings. We do not remember right now, because surely also this experience depends on a lot of different possibilities. So when the spirits here say to us, when saying, the spirit experience the moment of death as a joy, yes, but that is not a rule. It is important to understand. It is a joy for those souls, for those spirits, for those of us who are enjoying life from a transcendental perspective, from a holistic way of living, according to our choices, how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive life, how we use our free will. So when we spiritualize ourselves more, when we become more ethical, therefore we dematerialize our tendencies, our values, our concepts. In that way, we are more, let's say, flexible and more open and accepting our spiritual journey, which goes through the death of the physical body, which we call disincarnation as a natural process. And in that state of mind, surely we feel joy that we are coming to the end of the journey on earth, freeing ourselves from the physical body and continue alive, learning always. Moving forward, it's important to observe the note by Allan Kardec in the same question in the Spirit's book when he says, I quote, "In natural death, which occurs from the exhaustions of the organs as a result of age, a person lives life without realizing it. It is like a lamp going out for of oil. I like this analogy that he presented here. So when we live our lives in a respectful way, in a harmonious way, as learners as we are, forgiving as much as it's possible, learning to develop brotherhood, despite of race, despite of creed, to become more humane, to become more tolerant, to become more loving, to engage in our own spiritualization, which is to become kinder, to become more tolerant, to become more friendly, which means respecting the differences. And in that way, which if we reach the natural death through aging, not all the spirits reach that experience, but if that is our case and we naturally go through the aging process in a humble way, in a resignation way, meaning accepting the natural transformation of the physical body, understanding that we are not a physical body, but to be grateful that we had the physical body to express ourselves in the world while we are here in a constructive way, in a positive way, cooperating for our own evolution and the evolution of humanity. Therefore, when it comes to the aging process, we are more calmer internally, we are more peaceful, we have less regrets. At the same time, the spiritualization process helps us to understand the natural phenomenon of death and life as one process. So we may not face panic or fear. We just surround ourselves to this process. So it's fundamental to think about that. So how much we still can promote ourselves in that version of life, and therefore having a more peaceful ending when it comes in our direction according to God's will. We can do that. We can promote. We can favor that. And then carry on another question, 155. How does the separation of the soul from the body occur? Once the bonds that held the soul are ruptured, it disengages itself. So again, sometimes we may feel fearful because we don't know what happens. And really, we do understand when we come from materialistic perspectives or understandings, when we just take into account the physical body. But when we transcend our evolution in terms of concepts, in terms of ideas, in terms of new values about life, and then we become more serene within ourselves, and we understand better that it is a gradual process for those who go through in a natural death process, because there are also other processes which also are different, impact the soul in a different way. So once the body ages, that means in a natural process, it's fundamental to understand that all organs are becoming weaker. And also we may be dealing with more diseases, which also debilitate our biological body. So as the body becomes weaker, we also carry the vital energy within us that also becomes weaker as we age, if we are allocated in the experience of aging. And in that way that biological organs are weakening, and within a natural process, the soul frees itself more. So despite of our new understandings about ourselves as three-dimensional beings, understanding that death is a natural process that we keep alive and keep our own individuality, but how we choose to live our existences, how is our understanding of ourselves and lives, that can impact a lot, because we can cooperate for this separation happening in a subtle way. So when we don't have resistances, we are not dealing with attachments to people or money or belongings. When we are already more detached in our growing process, that helps immensely. And as more as we perceive ourselves as immortal beings, then we just allow ourselves, surrounding ourselves in the process, so that we help also, while the physical aspects are losing, we also gain the courage and the freedom on the soul level. We all can work on that on a daily basis, so that we tend to say we disincarnate or we die on daily basis according to the natural laws, that each minute, each day less, every day is a day less in our existence on earth. And there is nothing tragic about that. That is the natural way of living on earth as immortal beings. And then when we carry on in another question helping us here, in the Spirit's book, I quote, does this separation occur instantly and through an abrupt transition? Is there a well-defined dividing line between life and death? It is interesting to analyze the questions that Allan Kardec brought to the spirits to bring their responses and helping us to understand. And then they say, no, the soul liberates itself gradually. It does not escape like a captive bird that is suddenly set free. These two states touch and blend with each other. This way, the spirit disengages itself little by little from its bonds. They unravel, they do not break. It sounds to me so gentle, so loving, how the universal laws work in the universal phenomena of the physical death. Surely here we are talking about the natural death that is happening. But the major point here to address and to learn, so that we have a quieter, a calmer, a more peaceful disincarnation at the moment of a physical death, it is choosing to analyze how we are living our existences on earth. As more as we choose freely to be humble, to learn to be humble, to learn to practice charity in a global way. It's not only giving goods to others, although that also is relevant when people need them, but it is more on the psychological emotional dimension, when we learn to be more fraternal, when we learn to forgive despite of what others do or say in relation to us, when we choose to transcend our own shadows, when we choose to enlighten our own imperfections, giving new directions, when we choose to do good even for those that we never met before. Because within Spiritism, within the universal laws, we are all brothers and sisters in humanity. And choosing to love those who are not part of our biological blood usually is a great sign that we are developing self-love towards our universal family. Persisting in carry on learning about God, about love, about ourselves, and improving ourselves on a daily basis, which the universe insists in offering many experiences, because we, at the end of the day, we are the learners of ourselves. We are the teachers of ourselves too. And then carry on, can the definite separation between soul and body occur before the complete cessation of organic life? Sometimes in the death agony, the soul has already left the body, which has nothing left in it except organic life. The individual no longer has any self-awareness, and yet a faint breath of life still remains. The body is a machine that is kept going by the heart, and it continues to live as long as the heart circulates blood in the veins. And for that, it does not need the soul. So again, helping us here to analyze the interaction of the physical body and the soul. And surely if there is a lot of soul, a lot of blood running in our veins and the heart is beating, that takes some time, that the body may still carry on function despite the soul already freed from the body. So there is no a distinguished point that we can use for everyone, as everyone is unique, or physical death or the liberation from the physical death will also be a unique experience for all of us. The main point here again is be very grateful every day for our physical body, which is the way that we express ourselves as spirits while we are on earth. And the body has been given by God for us to evolve and progress, but understanding that is temporary. Sooner or later, because we have not been reincarnated to live on earth forever, that is not part of the natural organic life. So we all have a timing that we allocate here. And is the most important aspect is to live our lives fully in terms of goodness, in terms of brotherhood, in terms of favoring our own growth, our own progress on the intellectual and moral level, so that we can take that with us and also firstly benefit from those teachings, from those learnings that the enlightened spirits are offering to humanity, to all of us, if we are willing to study about that. In that way, we may not face fear by the end of the death, because we are more resigned towards the natural law, which is the law of law that involves us all while we are in the physical body, while we are transiting in the process of liberating ourselves from the physical body, while we are continuing our life without the physical body. That is quite hopeful, actually, quite consoling. And as we carry on in the question 157 in the Spirit's book, I quote, "At the moment of death, does the soul sometimes experience a longing or an ecstasy entailing a full glimpse of the world it is about to re-enter? The soul often feels that the bonds holding it to the body are loosening, and consequently, it employs all the efforts to separate them entirely. Already partially released from matter, it beholds the future upholding before it and enjoys the spirit state forehand." That sounds to me quite hopeful. But having said that, I do also understand, although we receive these informations from the spiritual guides, that does not mean that is the experience of every soul on the moment of the process of physical death. As mentioned previously, as more as if I am attached to matter, attached to people, attached to belongings, attached to money, attached to what will stay on earth, then I will not have that state of mind as referred in the question. But if we already are spiritualizing ourselves and are expanding the spirit over matter, it's not being indifferent, it's not that what I mean. I mean, really, to perceive ourselves from a transpersonal perspective. And in that way, we also are already more detached from external agents, could be people, could be money, could be properties, could be belongings or whatever. In that way, we are much more open and receptive to perceive the spiritual experience that unfolds in front of our eyes. Because as we are approaching the physical, natural death on the physical body, we are never alone. We always have our spiritual guides or spiritual friends from previous existences. And sometimes from these existences, those who already departed before us, they are awaiting us. And if we are more detached from matter, we can see them. Sometimes we can hear them. They are inviting us already. Look around. Welcome back. Welcome back home. And that is quite hopeful. That is quite consoling. So again, it depends pretty much how we choose to live our existences on a daily basis. That will impact our period or process when it comes for us to separate from the physical body. I repeat again, as a natural process, there is nothing to fear about. And then as we carry on here, what sensation does the soul experience at the moment it realizes that it is the spirit in the spirit's world? That depends. If it has done evil for the love of it, the spirit is at first ashamed of what it has done. However, it experiences something completely different if it has been morally upright. It feels relieved of a great weight and does not fear the most scrutinizing glance. Here in this question is important to understand when we say about sensation. I repeat again, as more as I'm attached to people, money, belongings, properties, not that we cannot have it. I said attached. As more as I attached, more dense my energy field is, less aware I am towards this reality of the spirit. But as more as we are already here, practicing good in daily basis, consciously, using our free will, choosing to do good, even for those who may not do it, silence whenever is necessary so that we don't complicate our own individuality in terms of darkness, but we enlighten our own darkness, our own shortcomings, and therefore grow psychologically, emotionally, therefore spiritually. And in that way, we are actually, let's say, free within, ready for that moment, listening what our dear friends in the spirit already are saying to us. Usually they invite us to come with me, welcome back home, because we are returning through the physical separation of the physical body, we are returning to the spiritual world. And we are not fearing that anyone would discover our shortcomings or the ill deeds that we may be doing and practicing on earth, if we choose to be honest, if we choose to be loyal to ourselves, if we choose to be faithful, if we choose to be respectful to ourselves and others. So we are actually becoming calmer and just allowing ourselves to go with the flow. Following another question, does the spirit immediately meet those who it knew on earth and who died before it? Is a relevant question. Yes, depending on the affection they had for each other. It is yes, depending on the affection. Thirdly, if we are hating each other, both, then we can also end up in the same environment through the negative, ill affections. But when we are practicing goodness, loving, gentleness, forgiveness, brotherhood, as much as we can on daily basis, then we will be more receptive to recognize those who departed before us and even recognize those that are our friends from previous existences, those who are caring about us, those who are there looking in our eyes in a loving way, embracing us, helping us to become stronger in the new environment, which is the spiritual world. I find it very consoling. And then if you move on in the question 161 is still in the Spirit's book, I quote, in violent or accidental death, when the organs are not yet debilitated by age or disease, does the separation of the soul and the cessation of life occur simultaneously? Usually so. In any case, however, the instant that separates them is very short. So here we analyze quite a lot the separation of the soul from the body through a natural aging process of the body, which debilitates the organs and the body becomes weaker and the soul becomes freer. But surely in these questions we are reminded they are death in a violent way through accident of any sort of. And in that way, it really depends pretty much where the soul is, but is a bit different, this initial process of separating the soul from the body. But it's still in general, no one is alone. We all have dear friends, spiritual benefactors who are with us in these moments of accident, of tragedy sometimes. It's fundamental to understand, either with ourselves or with others or dear ones, that even if they go or went through these kind of experiences, there is always goodness on the other side in the spiritual world, helping us in this awakening process, which is gradual, depending on each individuality. And in that way, as we are reaching closer to the end, we refer still in the Spirit's book, question 162. after being beheaded, for example, does an individual remain conscious for a few moments? Frequently, it remains so for a few moments until the organic life is completely extinguished. However, many times the fear of death causes a loss of consciousness before the actual moment of execution. So again, here we are guided in our reasoning of understanding the different process that the soul can separate from the physical body. Surely, we would never, once we are conscious of the reality of immortal beings as we are, essentially loving beings, loved by God, we carry on alive, we would never consider anymore to behead someone. But it still is happening in this time of that we are in 21st century. So again, it depends pretty much where the spirit is. We can also help those souls who go through those experiences through praying, through studying about the separation of the soul and the body as a natural phenomena, to having these enlightened thoughts on the reason level. We can think and really feel that they are not dead, they are alive, they are assisted by good beings who love them, because everyone has someone who loves them. So we are connecting, tuning into those enlightened spirits and helping one another as we go through the experiences on earth. And in the gospel, according to Spiritism, we learn with Spiritism, the future life ceases to be a mere article of faith, a mere hypothesis. It becomes a material reality demonstrated by facts, as we just did in these few questions. And surely there are many other questions, many more ways that we can learn about that. But it's not something that is an hypothesis. It is real. We are unique beings in the universe. We will never die. The physical body will come to the end sooner or later in different ways, but we keep on alive, and we all have dear ones are waiting for us. And as we conclude, coming to the end of our reflections today, I quote, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Jesus Christ, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago. We all have been created by God with love in order to learn to love as we evolve, as we heal ourselves, as we progress, as we learn to do good. This is how there is a reason that He created us, so that we can learn to potentialize ourselves from within. Every day, every moment, we have the opportunities granted by the universe to improve ourselves and to live life fully from a spiritual loving way, understanding since we reincarnate in a new body as old souls, we are already going towards the end of this period in this physical body. We are not the physical bodies. We are spirits who are always grateful for our physical bodies, but also at the same time promoting our consciousness towards reality. Sooner or later, we are out, separated from the physical body, alive, together with the dear ones who love us. And in that way, we are coming to the end today. Wishing peace to all. Hope to see you in another opportunity with more reflections. Much peace to all. Take care.